The Vietnam War ended more than 40 years ago, but the impact of that war still reverberates in American society. This weekend, New Mexico PBS will begin airing the new Ken Burns documentary series, The Vietnam War. Producer Sarah Gustavus sat down recently with editor Paul Barnes, a longtime collaborator of Mr. Burns, to learn more about how the project came together.
Paul Barnes, thank you for stopping by, coming back to New Mexico in Focus to talk with us.
My pleasure.
All right, so on the Vietnam War, the war impacted so many communities, both in here and in Vietnam. Can you tell us about some of the voices, some of the perspectives that we'll hear from in this particular series?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's most brilliant about what Ken and Lynn decided to do with the series was to show it from 3 points of view. You know, almost all of Ken's films are about American history exclusively. They almost never cross the borders. But in this particular case, the war so deeply affected not just the United States, but the South Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese. And the more Lynn would read about it, the more she realized that to really get the true story of what happened during the war, we really should do it from the 3 different perspectives. And initially Ken was a little reluctant, again, because he's so American history centric. But the more she talked to him about it and then introduced him to some Vietnamese historians who were coming up to the Harvard Vietnam School, then he decided, okay, let's give it a shot. He was also worried about the expense of traveling over there, the necessity to use subtitles for the interviews, and that worried him a little bit. But when they went over and did the first set of interviews, what came back was so extraordinary. And you realize the humanity of these people, the honesty of these people, and their perspective was so entirely different than what ours was. And so to triangulate the story through the 3 different points of view, I think was a masterstroke for the show. And we tried very hard in the editing to achieve a balance where we were going back and forth between the US, South Vietnamese, North Vietnamese, and constantly trying to intercut those perspectives. One of the battles, in particular the Ia Drang battle, involved one of our American vets, one of our North Vietnamese vets, and one of our South Vietnamese vets. And the ability to intercut between the 3 of those in one sequence, it's just extraordinary to be able to feel what it was like and how they felt about the way in which that battle was going from those different perspectives.
With nearly 100 interviews with all these people, it must be an incredible task to decide how to place them out in the storyline. How do you approach that as an editor?
It's very difficult. You just have to be very, very patient because the placement of interviews and where you use certain people at certain times is really crucial to kind of the dramatic arc of the whole story. And a great deal of that we actually rely on our writer, Jeffrey C. Ward. Jeffrey will get the interviews. Ken and Lynn will have sat down, they will have selected what they think are the best ones, and then they give these selects to Jeff. And then Jeff goes through, he's written the whole narrative without interviews, and then he goes through and starts to think about where can I place these interviews that will work in conjunction with my narration, work well in conjunction with the story that's being told. And sometimes he'll pull out giant chunks of his own narration and replace it with an interview bite because it's far more interesting than anything he wrote. In fact, he tries very hard to replace himself with real people talking. You know, he's very happy if there can be a couple of pages where it's nothing but intercut interviews and all of his writing is gone because he feels they're just telling a much realer story. But it is tricky, and part of the editing process is that we're constantly switching talking heads around from the end of a show to the beginning of a show. We had an interview bite that was in episode 9 that is now the first interview bite in episode 1. It's the first thing you hear from this veteran called Carl Melantes. And so it's really interesting how the perception of the film and how you present the story, how you do the storytelling changes because of these shifting around of the voices that you've chosen.
Regular PBS viewers have seen Ken Burns' other work. You've been a longtime producer and editor with Ken Burns. What's different about this project? What will we see that's going to have a different feel to it?
I think that people will really recognize that stylistically it feels different than his other films. The last big series that we did was The Roosevelts. And that was done in a style I think that people are very, very familiar with. It's primarily photographs. There's a certain rhythm that people have gotten used to in the way Ken tells the stories. There's a certain pacing even to the moves that are used. On Vietnam, I think Ken felt the story was more violent, more dynamic, more dramatic. And so he kept asking the editors to start cutting faster, use more images, speed up the moves. Instead of doing those long, slow zooms in, often he would ask us to cut the time in half. The use of music as well is much different. I mean, we're using all of the well-known contemporary pop music from the time that was so famous, like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Dylan and Joan Baez. All different pieces of that kind of music are placed throughout the film. But then he and Lynn also hired Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who won the Oscar for the score of The Social Network. And they do this really strange electronic music that had it just vibe-wise fit so well with the tensions in this story, and with the horror and with the violence and with the bittersweet moments. What they wrote is just kind of extraordinary. And then to counterbalance that, they asked Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble to come up with some Asian themes that they began to, a couple of the musicians in the ensemble are Vietnamese, but Yo-Yo and the rest of the ensemble began to research Vietnamese music. And so they came up with a whole set of themes that we could use for the Vietnamese side of the story. And then we had a young composer in New York named David Sierra, who supplied music that was a little more in tune with what Ken normally uses, and a little more American in a kind of feel. And the combination, again, of those three different types of music make the soundtrack feel much different than most of his films do. So I think he really went out on an edge with this, just trying to do things that were a little more dynamic than the way we did things in the past. And the soundtrack, too, he wanted the battles to just pop alive. And so we asked the sound editors to go crazy with the military effects, but also to use some abstracted effects where they're kind of electronic stings, and they have a kind of moody feel. It's more sound design than just sound editing. And they help to give a whole different tone and mood to some of the sections of the film. So I think that the audience is going to see something a bit different than they're used to in Ken's films. And I think they'll find it incredibly effective. I certainly thought so as we were cutting it. I mean, all of these new additions and Ken asking us to cut a little faster and be a little more dynamic was, I thought was very effective in terms of the subject matter.